A few days ago, we had a Q&A with some of the teams that are thinking of applying to the Airminers Launchpad Accelerator. And this point came up where I was encouraging teams to just continue to appreciate that carbon removal is both impossible and necessary. And I just got a note from Jack Sullivan, who had watched the recording. He said, that's an interesting point. So I wanted to expand more on that. So I appreciate, Jack, your nudge for this. Carbon removal is necessary and impossible. It's necessary because there's way too much carbon dioxide already in the atmosphere. And even if we stopped every single emission today, there would still be 1 trillion tons of excess carbon dioxide put in the atmosphere. The IPCC says we need to get to 10 gigatons, 10 billion tons of carbon dioxide removal per year by 2050. So this starts to get into why this is impossible. What's impossible about this is that today we remove about 10,000 tons of carbon dioxide from the year. What that means is we need 1 million-fold improvement over the next 28 years. And just looking at some of the math, nothing like that has ever been done before in any industry. I'm curious if there is an industry, if there is an analog we can find. But the computing industry, as a comparison, if you take a step back and look at that 1 million-fold growth we need, that's on the order of 50% year-over-year improvement from that 10,000 tons up to 10 billion tons. We need to get better, 50% better every year for the next 28 years. How does that compare to the computing industry? Well, Moore's law is a useful comparison here in terms of the improvement in terms of computation every year. And so if you look back over Moore's law looks like a 40% improvement year over year since 1965. So your takeaway from this could be, we need to go faster than Moore's law. Is there any industry out there that's ever done that? And you can start to say, you know what, that sounds like it might be impossible, but it is impossible and necessary. By the way, that whole Moore's law comparison, posted out on Airminer Slack. Grant Faber had some excellent feedback as to why that might not be like the best comparison, but still, I think it really illustrates this idea around this being impossible, or at the very least, like we need to go faster than anyone has ever gone. And so what's important to me when I was talking to these teams that are applying to the Launchpad Accelerator is that it's really important to keep these concepts separate. If you add together impossible and necessary, what you get is a lot of stuff that it kind of looks like everyday activity from the outside. If you add together impossible and necessary and you figure out how to get started on that, it looks like sending emails. It looks like machining parts. It looks like scooping up a sample of soil and putting it in a box. These things sort of look like everyday actions, but it's really important for people in carbon removal to remember that it isn't just a continuation of what came before. It doesn't look like everyday action because what we're doing is just continuing with business as usual. The reason it can look like everyday action is because it is the intersection of the necessary and the impossible. And doing things the way that we've done them before won't get us there. So what it means is there's some additional kind of tools that start to pop out, or some behaviors that emerge. You start to see if things are both impossible and necessary, being playful is super important. This can't be serious mode all the time. It can't be, because how the heck can you go after something that is impossible and necessary? These two things are almost opposites, right? How can you possibly do that? That's where playfulness and creativity play a huge role. And so that's a feature that we see, or a behavior that you see throughout the carbon removal community. There are memes and people making jokes and people trying to figure out, how do we do this thing? How do we convince ourselves of this, that we can make progress on this thing that is necessary and impossible? Another feature is, find people that get it. It's really, really hard. If somebody doesn't really get carbon removal and they say, that's necessary, but it's also impossible, so you should just go do something else. That's really tough. It's tough to have that discussion every single day. And so working with other people that get it is another key piece of how we get there, and how we get there faster than any other industry has ever done it before. So being around other people that are working on carbon removal solutions, the Air Miners community is a big part of that. I've loved that, being able to be around other people that get it, and not have to spend so much time on the people that don't get it. The other thing is, it seems to, if you're looking for people to work with, if you're looking for people to be partners or consultants or advisors, look for people that have made a radical change in their career. Look for companies that have radically shifted what they're doing. Whether it worked out or not, look at the people and the companies that made an attempt to swing in a different direction, because that's what's needed to get to gigaton scale carbon removal. That's what's needed to get this kind of pace of innovation. It's not going to be a let's continue doing what we're doing, we're really good at it, let's just keep doing that. It's going to be, we got to change the game. So I've noticed in carbon removal, one of the nice things is when you get people that are really into carbon removal, this field is 5 years old. So anybody who's like all about it probably switched from some other career or some other thing they were working on. So everybody that's kind of active in carbon removal had to make this leap. So it's kind of a nice filter there, is anybody that's actually already in carbon removal, they kind of are thinking about this necessary and impossible thing and still diving on in. There's other communities that I'm noticing also have some of these attributes. I think in the biotech world, there's a lot of people in terms of thinking about human life and health seem to take on some of these impossible and necessary tasks. I think the crypto community, I've started to learn, is very comfortable taking on something that seems totally impossible and totally necessary. I think that it's important to look for those kind of communities that are really trying to take on new ideas, and it's a good place to find advisors or colleagues or co-founders or people to work with. So that's my view on this impossible and necessary task. And it's time to get back to it. My main takeaway here is whatever you take from this idea of impossible and necessary, maybe you talk about this with people, maybe you put it in your pitch deck, maybe you share it with the whole world. The most important thing is that you keep this for yourself, that you know that when you wake up every day that this is impossible and necessary and that you still make progress on it. You don't have to put it in your pitch deck. Maybe the 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 5-year vision, all those things are still, that stuff's really important. Those are important tools for making things happen. But just make sure that you remember internally, this is necessary and impossible. And those are really hard problems to solve. And so, that's the message there. Carbon removal is necessary and impossible. And we're going to get to gigaton scale carbon removal, and we're going to scale faster than any industry has in the history of humanity.